Talkin TV Top 10 list. So in a strange turn of events, 2021 has low-key been the year of The Sopranos. Between the wrap-up of the Talking Sopranos run that started last April, the low-key spark of the fandom back in 2019 for the 20-year anniversary, and the release of the first Sopranos prequel film, The Many Saints of Newark. Originally, I was going to do my top 10 favorite episodes of this groundbreaking show, but after some thoughts and considerations, I wanted to talk about something that this show really reintroduced into the culture and was such a crucial part of it: death. This show completely recontextualized the way that death is perceived on screen through its translations of hideous, immoral deeds into characters that felt oh so relatable on a human level. To gangsters, death truly is just another part of life. And so, to honor my favorite show of all time and to contribute my part to the Sopranos revival movement with the next edition of my top 10 end of the year series, here are the top 10 deaths on the Sopranos. And caution for those who haven't watched the show, but major spoilers ahead. Tony Blundetto. Talk about a one-off for the ages. Portrayed by the great Steve Buscemi, Tony Blundetto was Tony Soprano's maternal cousin and longtime childhood friend. So much so that Tony often referred to him as the brother he never had. After being sent to jail as a result of a truck hijacking gone horribly wrong, he's released at the beginning of the show's 5th season along with other imprisoned mafiosos, Feach Lamanna, Phil Leotardo, and Angelo Gareppi. Despite a warm welcome from Tony and company, he soon discovers that his old life is in complete shambles, having lost his wife, his daughter having run away, and practically nothing left to his own name. Despite attempting to live a straight life free of crime, an act that greatly displeases the other Tony at first, he is eventually drawn back in due to his attraction to the lifestyle, an act that eventually tragically backfires on him when he gets involved in the New York war occurring between Johnny Sack and Little Carmine due to his friendship with Angelo. This starts a cascade of events that eventually leads to him pulling the trigger on Billy Leotardo, younger brother of Phil. Backed into a corner by both Phil and John, Tony S. realizes that he has no other choice once he realizes his options are hand over his cousin to be tortured mercilessly or risk the chance of his entire operation being strong-armed and taken over by the New York family. He tracks down his cousin to their retired uncle's farm where he's been hiding and fires off a double-barrel shotgun directly into his face. It's a tragically comic end to a character that we only got to spend one season with. And the interesting thing about Blundetto as a character is that despite him not being a direct antagonist to Tony, he ends up creating one of the greatest conflicts he's ever had, as Tony is strongly protective of his cousin due to him originally supposed to be at the carjacking that got him sent to prison, but missed it due to a panic attack caused by his mother. Eugene Pontecorvo. A surprising addition, mostly because this is a character that the show seemingly forgot about. Robert Funaro was added to the main cast in season 3 as recompense due to a mistake the casting agents made, thinking that he would be playing Ralph Cifaretto. His character Eugene instead ended up getting made at the same time as Christopher, and served in Ralph and later Vito's crews for the next 2 seasons, remaining primarily a background character. This changed drastically, however, in the 6th season premiere members only, when Eugene surprisingly gets a decent-sized arc in what would unfortunately turn out to be his last appearance on the show alive. Giving us a glimpse into his private life, we're made to understand just how much pressure Eugene is under, attempting to leave the mafia life with his wife and family and move to Florida, while also being revealed as the latest FBI informant. Despite his best efforts to appeal to both Tony and the FBI, Eugene is denied on all fronts, and slowly starts to feel the floor crumble out from underneath him. The final straw is him discovering that his drug addict son is using again, and feeling left with no other options, Eugene hangs himself in his garage, in one of the most shocking and brutal deaths in any TV show. It was a tragic end to a character that most people had more than likely forgotten about, showing us as the audience to never underestimate even the background players. Phil Leotardo. Never back down, never compromise. A looming force over the last 3 seasons of the show, mafia actor and New York legend Frank Vincent was brought on as Phil Leotardo, one of several old-school mafiosos released from prison at the beginning of season 5. He quickly moves back into his former role in the New York Lupertazzi family, siding with Johnny Sack in the conflict against Little Carmine. Unfortunately, this leads Phil down a dark path of slights, as his involvement in the conflict and his murdering of Angelo Gareppi makes him a target for Tony Blundetto, a move that gets his younger brother Billy killed. Swearing vengeance against the DeMeos, he is robbed of his vengeance when Tony Soprano kills his cousin, before being rewarded with the acting boss position when Johnny Sack is arrested by the FBI. The temporary peace between New York and New Jersey is threatened once again when Vito, who is married to Phil's younger cousin, is revealed to be gay, a grave grievance to Phil that leads to him murdering Vito once he returns to New Jersey. After a crippling heart attack, he assumes his position as head of the New York family after Johnny Sack is permanently imprisoned and later dies of severe lung cancer, but proceeds to make life even more miserable for New Jersey, simply for no other reason other than he can, having tired of the constant perceived insults, slights, and feelings that he has not gotten the respect that he deserves, despite all his years of service. After a few too many straws are pulled, Phil declares open war on New Jersey, having Bobby Bacala killed and Silvio Dante put into a coma. He is finally tracked down to Oyster Bay, Long Island by Tony's crew with the help of longtime FBI agent Dwight Harris, and is executed with a direct shot to the head by Walden Belfiore, before his car, still in drive, runs over his face. Despite not being as prominent an antagonist in Tony's life as Richie Aprile or Ralph Cifaretto, Phil was a character who ultimately let his insecurities get the better of him and easily caused the most outward harm. Vito Spatafore. The Sopranos had a constant track record of setting characters up for doomed endings, then dragging them out across an entire season before ultimately executing them. Vito was next in this line. A consistent player in the April crew, Vito served under two captains and the two most prominent antagonists towards Tony in the first couple of seasons of the show, before finding himself made the captain of that crew near the end of season 4 after Ralphie's untimely demise. He quickly makes his way up, eventually becoming Tony's highest earner, and even attempts to worm his way into a more prominent position at Tony's side, with one gigantic hitch. He's revealed to be gay, a grievous error that the Mafia is very against. In one of the show's more controversial storylines, Vito is forced to go on the run when it eventually gets out, settling in a small New Hampshire town and bonding with the residents, even forming a relationship with the small town's diner chef and volunteer firefighter Johnny. Unfortunately, similar to Tony B's struggle, Vito cannot resist the allure of the Mafia lifestyle, and eventually finds his way back to New Jersey, attempting to buy his way back into the crew, a move that Tony almost considers. Unfortunately, Phil strong-ups Tony by threatening to shut down their joint construction businesses, forcing Tony to put a hit out on Vito. Phil beats him to it, however, tracking Vito to his motel where he's staying and having his goons Jerry Torchiano and Fat Dom Gamiello, God I love Mafia nicknames, beat him to death. It was a tragic ending to the latest of many tragic characters on this show's run, and still one of the more controversial storylines ever done in an HBO series. Bobby Bacalieri. The lovable Bobby Bacala, portrayed by Talking Sopranos co-creator and co-host Steve Sciarippa, quickly became a fan favorite character due to his more gentle demeanor, him constantly being picked on by Tony for seemingly no reason, and the fact that of all these sleazeball gangsters that fans of the show spent week after week watching, he seemed to be the only one with even an ounce of morality to him. A fallout victim from Junior's attempted assassination of Tony at the end of the first season, Bobby is both rewarded and humiliated by being forced to be Junior's caretaker, a move that slowly over time earns up a surprising amount of respect for Tony. Over the course of the show, he eventually marries Janice and has a daughter with her, and after Junior's incarceration for shooting Tony, even works his way up to underboss of the family, even surpassing series mainstays Christopher and Paulie. Unfortunately, the corruption of the Sopranos affects even the most good-hearted of people, as Tony forces Bobby to commit his first murder at the start of the final season as punishment for beating him in their drunken fight, removing that last veil of innocence he once had left over him. It reflects in the final 2 episodes as Bobby became the first victim of the fallout of the New York-New Jersey war, being executed by 2 hitmen in a model train store, failing to have been alerted to the danger because he left his cell phone in his car. Of all the deaths in The Sopranos, this one may have had the most major effects on Tony, as he reflects on Bobby's final surprisingly philosophical words in describing what happens when one dies.
You probably don't even hear it when it happens, right?
There's your friend in there, on the wall.
Richie Aprile, the second major antagonist of the series, introduced after Junior and Livia in the second season as a force to be reckoned with, and played by the next in a long line of Mafia movie alumni, David Proval. Richie Aprile quickly proved to be one of the biggest headaches for Tony in his new official tenure as boss of the family. Despite Tony feeling a warm connection to him being the late Jackie Aprile's older brother, Richie quickly proves to be too menacing, too insecure, and much too violent and crazy to really be a benefit to anyone. Not even 3 minutes after he's out of jail, Richie tracks down former partner Beansy Gaeta and attempts to shake him down for a share of his pizza joints, before smacking him in the face with a coffee pot and a chair and running him over with his SUV, permanently crippling Beansy. The irritations keep piling up as Richie then attempts to violently assault Davey Scatino at Tony's executive card game due to him still gambling, despite owing Richie money, which causes Tony to force Richie into a standstill that Davey owes Tony before Richie. It also doesn't help that Richie has rekindled his former relationship with Janice, who was also introduced this season, who begins manipulating and pushing him towards taking out Tony and becoming head of the family. Richie attempts to coerce Junior and Albert Berets into backing him, but Albert refuses, which causes Junior to reevaluate his position and warn Tony about Richie's pending hit. Right as Tony is about to make his move, though, in the first of many surprises that the writers would pull on the audience, Richie is killed by Janice after an argument they have over Richie's son's sexual orientation that turns violent, leading Janice to shoot Richie dead. A surprisingly violent end to a character that made a huge impact on the show with only 8 episodes of screen time. This is arguably the death that would set the tone for the rest of the show to come. Ralph Cifaretto.
I know it's tragic to think this way, but you can't argue with the fucking lie.
You could say this one was in the making, but there's also the notion that the minute this guy is introduced on screen, you knew his time was limited. Easily the most complex antagonist for Tony since Livia, Joe Pantoliano's Ralph is, ironically enough, introduced in the same episode that Livia dies, and is immediately shown to be an irritant. But the thing that's also established, which is something that haunts Tony up until the moment of his death, is that Ralph is the #1 earner of the entire family, making him invaluable to not only Tony, but the New York crews as well. Unfortunately, his abrasive and obnoxious behavior, as well as his violent tendencies, do nothing but cause problems for everyone, as he's almost killed by Tony, first for murdering the Bada Bing stripper Tracy in cold blood, before being promoted to captain after Gigi Chestone's untimely death. Then, he almost unintentionally starts a conflict with New York when he makes a crude fat joke about Ginny Sacramone that reaches John. It all comes to a head near the end of season 4, when his and Tony's prized racing horse, Pi Oh My, dies in a fire that consumes her stable, with Tony immediately suspecting that Ralph burned down the stable to collect the insurance money to pay for his son's hospital bills. He visits Ralph at his house, and in an encounter that would prove to be one of the most iconic on the entire show, the two get into an argument argument that quickly escalates, with Pantoliano receiving extra credit here due to the fact that despite him being told to play it as if Ralph was truly innocent, he still came off as duplicitous. They quickly come to blows, with Tony easily getting the upper hand and strangling Ralph, in some sense also achieving justice for Tracy with his proclamation of "Beautiful innocent creature, what did she ever do to you?" The thing I always found interesting about Ralph as a character is that I always saw him as the externalized version of everything Tony hated about himself. Because even though he was a scumbag for sure, I never really saw him as that much worse than any of the other guys, other than the fact that he likes to, casually murder women. To top it off, Tony calls in Christopher to help him clean up Ralph's body, with Christopher in the depths of heroin addiction. It's still one of the most brutal deaths in the show, in one of the most iconic and brilliantly written episodes, and the perfect send-off for a character of Ralph's ilk. Sal Big Pussy Bonpensiero. The first instance of a major character getting killed off on a TV show deserves its own reward, something outside of The Sopranos. Big Pussy was a character that David Chase didn't even give too much thought to when he wrote him out of the show at the end of season 1. But the fan outcry for what happened to him was so huge that Chase finally caved and brought him back for season 2, for arguably the most interesting and compelling part of The Sopranos' sophomore season. After disappearing into the ether, Big Pussy returned, supposedly having been in Puerto Rico with his Gumar to dodge the other guy's suspicion of him turning rat. Unfortunately, this is revealed to be true, as he had been caught by the FBI back in the 90s for heroin trafficking and had been informing for them ever since. The first real instance of a rat on the show haunts Tony Soprano for the entirety of the season, as he just can't seem to shake the feeling that there's something his good friend is not telling him. Pussy does his best to dodge Tony, killing an Elvis impersonator who recognizes him while he's meeting with his FBI plan, and giving Tony the location of Matthew Bevilacqua, Christopher's shooter. Unfortunately, the double life eventually catches up to him, as a series of fugue dreams that Tony has as a result of food poisoning finally clues him in, and his suspicions are confirmed when a surprise visit to Pussy's house allows them to find the wire. Bringing him out to supposedly test a new boat, Tony, Paulie, and Silvio confront him and force him to reveal the truth. Despite his proclamation that he can continue his double agent duties and that he would never do anything to incriminate him, Tony knows what he must do, and after a last shot of tequila with their old friend, the three of them unload their lead into Pussy and take him out to sleep with the fishes. This was the first major instance of Tony Soprano killing someone personal to him, and it would not be the last, but at least we got to have one last ride with a younger version of him in the Many Saints of Newark. Adriana Lacerva. Oh man. Arguably the most heartbreaking TV death of the last 20 years. This is right up there with Charlie in Lost, Mark in ER, Wallace in The Wire, everybody from The Red Wedding. Because the thing that separates Adriana from pretty much every other character on this list, besides the fact that she wasn't really directly tied up in any mafia activities, is that she was primarily innocent. Well, as innocent as you can get on these types of shows. Christopher's longtime girlfriend and later on fiance had to put up with constant abuse, both from Christopher physically and the other mobsters and FBI agents who only viewed her as eye candy. When the FBI loses Big Pussy at the end of season 2, they quickly set their sights on Adriana, who they view as a huge win given how close to the inner circle she is, and send in an undercover agent to pose as her friend. After being brought in, she is coerced into being a confidential informant for them, and for the next 2 seasons has to deal with the stress that no normal human being should have to go through. Literally between a rock and a hard place, having to choose between going to prison or being murdered if any of the gangsters find out. It all comes to a head in the season 5 penultimate episode, Long-Term Parking, in which a murder that occurs at her club, the Crazy Horse, gives the FBI the ammunition to force her to wear a wire. Quickly running out of options, Adriana attempts to use Christopher's mounting frustrations with Tony to attempt to get him to flip. Christopher's reaction to Adriana's revelation is still some of the best acting ever displayed by both Imperioli and Drea Di Matteo, and it almost works, at least for us, the audience. But Adriana severely underestimates Chris's loyalty to Tony, and in a sequence that's simultaneously gut-wrenching and brilliantly executed, Tony pulls one over on her and us by calling her and pretending that Christopher has attempted suicide, before having Silvio pick her up, bring her out into the woods, and execute her on the spot. The crazy thing here is that this death is just as devastating for Tony as it is for Chris, as you can see it in the look on his face in the final shot of the episode. Before we move on to the number 1 choice, here are some honorable mentions.
I can feel it itching me already.
Oh, God, Mommy! Mommy, please, Tony, please.
Christopher Moltisanti. The number 1 death on the show is the death that was both inevitable and that no one saw coming. When it was at its best, The Sopranos would take tried and true mafia and crime movie tropes and twist them on their heads, so that even when someone was so sure of what the outcome of a certain character would be, the show would still keep them guessing up until the end. From the minute he's introduced in the show, Christopher Moltisanti has a fractured and volatile relationship with Tony Soprano. Tony lovingly refers to Christopher as his nephew, despite them only being second cousins, and takes him under his wing as his protege, due to Tony's admiration for Christopher's father, the late Vicky Moltisanti, whom we finally get to meet in the Many Saints of Newark, portrayed brilliantly by Alessandro Nivola. Tony attempts to fill in the role of a father figure to Chris for most of his life, but this is constantly at odds with Tony's own insecurities and inability to let others actually do well for themselves, as well as Christopher's own incompetence and weaknesses. Chris is constantly attempting to measure up to Tony, but also has dreams and ambitions of his own outside the mafia in the world of movies, is unfortunately also not the brightest, something that causes him to constantly make mistakes, and is extremely violent towards women, particularly his girlfriend Adriana, as well as becoming addicted to drugs over the course of the show. It finally comes to a head in the 4th season when, after Christopher shows up high to help Tony dispose of Ralph, accidentally sits on and kills Adriana's dog Cosette, gets his car jacked, and then beats up Adriana. Tony decides to stage an intervention for him. Of course, goes horrifically and results in Chris being forcibly sent to rehab. He gets out and attempts to improve his life, focusing more on his work, even befriending a fellow screenwriter in an Alcoholics Anonymous, JT. But after an affair that almost erupts between Tony and Adriana, Adriana's revelation of being an FBI informant, Chris's multiple relapse, and later on an affair with Juliana Skiff, a real estate agent whom Tony had developed feelings for, severely strains his relationship with his uncle and cousin. It finally comes to a conclusion in the final season, when the release of Christopher and JT's movie Cleaver makes Tony realize how much latent hatred Christopher truly has for him. On their way back from a meeting in New York over an asbestos conundrum, Christopher swerves his car to avoid an oncoming car and flips it multiple times into a ditch. Tony is largely unscathed, but Christopher is hurt badly and is coughing up blood. Before he can call 911, Tony notices the car seat for Christopher's newborn daughter in the backseat, impaled by a tree branch. Realizing that his nephew, someone who he once considered his prize heir, will forever be a danger and a liability to himself and everyone around him, Tony smothers Chris with his own blood by grabbing his nose, cutting off his air supply, and causing Chris to suffocate on his own blood. The worst part is that by that point in the show, Tony is so far gone down the road of evil that he feels practically nothing but relief for Christopher's death, accepting it while on a mushroom trip in Vegas with another one of Chris's former fling. It was one of the darkest moments of the entire show, a moment of true irreparability to a character that may have had it coming, but also seemingly never truly had an ounce of agency in his own life, which couldn't be more Sopranos if you tried, making it truly the best Sopranos death. And that was it. Those are the top 10 best Sopranos deaths. What did you guys think? Whatever your thoughts are, leave them in the comment section below. Be sure to also click the like button and the subscribe button and the bell next to it. That way you guys get notified every time we put up new content. Be sure to also follow us on our social media pages at Talkin TV Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And remember, people, 12 scenes in a short film, and watch more fucking movies.